When you think of Angus Young, you envision scorching guitar riffs, electrifying performances, and an unshakable dedication to pure rock and roll. However, what many might not realize is that the AC/DC icon had little tolerance for bands he believed fell short of his expectations. "I'm the laziest person you'll ever meet. I do nothing. It's very hard, especially someone like Bon, who's more like, yeah." And we're not discussing obscure acts. Young had scathing critiques for some of rock's most legendary names. Prepare yourself, because his opinions are as fierce as his solos. Ramones. While the Ramones were revered for distilling rock to its raw essence and reinvigorating the genre with a primal, high-octane sound, not everyone was captivated by their minimalist approach. Among the doubters was Angus Young, the legendary guitarist of AC/DC, who rejected the notion that punk was genuinely innovative. To Young, what the Ramones and their punk peers were doing wasn't revolutionary. It was a recycled version of what earlier rock bands had already mastered. He specifically cited groups like the Small Faces and the Faces, arguing they had injected rock with a gritty, rebellious spirit long before punk emerged. Young viewed punk not as a bold new wave, but as a regression, reducing rock to its most rudimentary form. He contended that punk musicians were merely adopting the raw, unrefined sound of bands like the Faces and turning it into their entire identity, without the technical prowess or depth that defined their influences. While many praised punk for its defiant energy and stripped-down aesthetic, Young remained unconvinced. His skepticism was especially evident in his assessment of the Ramones, whom he bluntly dismissed. "I heard one song, and it did nothing for me. It felt like my first band when I was 12, which was better." To him, their music lacked sophistication, resembling the amateurish efforts of a garage band rather than seasoned professionals. But Young's criticism extended beyond the Ramones. He took aim at the entire punk movement, asserting that while punk bands boasted raw intensity, they lacked the technical skill that had defined classic rock. "They can do all that. It's pretty easy for a guy to go up there and do all that. But they can't play," he remarked, dismissing punk's simplicity as a shortcut for musicians who couldn't match the instrumental mastery of their predecessors. For Young, rock was about more than just attitude. It demanded talent, precision, and artistry. While punk had rebellion in spades, he believed it sacrificed the musical intricacy that made bands like the Small Faces, the Faces, and even AC/DC exceptional. To him, punk wasn't an evolution. It was a step backward, trading skill for sheer rawness. Kiss, AC/DC, and Kiss were titans of 70s and 80s rock, each dominating the era with their distinct styles. Though both thrived in hard rock, they were often compared due to their bombastic stage presence and anthemic hits. Yet despite the parallels, Angus Young never held Kiss in high regard. Unlike acts that embraced theatrics, Young believed rock should be about pure energy, musicianship, and attitude, not gimmicks or flashy distractions. Throughout his career, Young openly criticized bands that prioritized spectacle over substance, and Kiss epitomized that approach in his eyes. He mocked their reliance on over-the-top antics, elaborate costumes, and pyrotechnics, arguing these were crutches to mask a lack of genuine musical talent. While Kiss thrilled audiences with makeup, fire-breathing, and blood-spitting theatrics, Young saw these elements as distractions from what truly mattered: the music. He believed real rock and roll didn't need embellishment, just killer riffs, relentless energy, and an authentic connection with the crowd. This philosophical divide set the band's worlds apart. Where Kiss built their brand on spectacle, AC/DC stripped everything down to the basics. Their shows thrived on raw power, blistering guitar work, and high-voltage delivery, no gimmicks required. Young and AC/DC maintained that if a band needed theatrics to entertain, their music wasn't strong enough to stand alone. One of the most revealing moments of this rift came when AC/DC was offered a joint tour with Kiss. Gene Simmons, the band's co-founder and bassist, later admitted that AC/DC turned them down. As a group rooted in theatrics rather than musical credibility, Simmons acknowledged that AC/DC refused because Kiss's flamboyant style clashed with their no-nonsense, bare-bones rock ethos. Despite Kiss's colossal commercial success, Young never considered them musical equals. To him, they symbolized a version of rock that valued image over artistry. While millions adored Kiss's larger-than-life personas, Young remained unswayed, convinced that true rock bands didn't need face paint or stage tricks to command respect. In the end, both bands cemented their legacies, but on entirely different terms. Kiss became icons of theatrical rock, while AC/DC earned their place as purveyors of hard-hitting, no-frills anthems. And for Angus Young, that distinction was everything. Because in his world, rock and roll was about the music, not the show. Deep Purple. Angus Young's aversion to Deep Purple wasn't merely a matter of personal taste. It was fueled by a direct, negative encounter that left a lasting mark. The tension originated during a festival appearance at Sunbury, where AC/DC and Deep Purple's road crews clashed. While the exact details of the dispute have blurred over time, the hostility was intense enough to cement Young's disdain for the band, reinforcing an opinion he'd already begun forming. In an interview with Guitar World magazine, Young didn't mince words when criticizing Deep Purple, making it abundantly clear he'd never been an admirer. He recounted attending one of their concerts, expecting a powerhouse performance from the acclaimed rock group. Instead, he left thoroughly unimpressed. "I saw Deep Purple live once, and I paid money for it, and I thought, geez, this is ridiculous," he recalled, voicing his disappointment at what he deemed an overhyped act. To Young, their show felt unconvincing, with grandiose stage theatrics that struck him as little more than smoke and mirrors. His critique extended beyond their live shows. Young openly admitted he'd never connected with Deep Purple's music. "I never liked those Deep Purples or those sorts of things. I always hated it," he stated, dismissing their entire approach to rock. While many hailed Deep Purple as pioneers of hard rock and early heavy metal, Young refused to place them on the same pedestal. Instead, he saw them as a diluted imitation of a superior act. "So I always thought it was a poor man's Led Zeppelin," he quipped, delivering one of his most scathing remarks. To Young, Deep Purple lacked the authenticity and raw energy he cherished in rock. Despite their reputation for pioneering heavy riffs and virtuosic musicianship, epitomized by Ritchie Blackmore's guitar wizardry and John Lord's organ mastery, Young viewed them as overly theatrical, devoid of the organic grit that defined bands like AC/DC. Unlike Deep Purple's often elaborate prog-influenced compositions, AC/DC's music was straightforward, riff-driven, and built on a no-frills, high-voltage energy Young considered the true essence of rock and roll. His criticism also reflected a broader skepticism toward the era's evolving rock trends. While Deep Purple, much like Led Zeppelin, embraced technical proficiency and experimental flourishes, Young remained a staunch advocate for the blues-infused, bare-bones sound AC/DC championed. By labeling Deep Purple a poor man's Led Zeppelin, he wasn't just expressing a preference. He was rejecting bands that prioritized technical showmanship over raw power and simplicity. In the decades since, Deep Purple has solidified its legacy as a foundational force in hard rock and heavy metal, while AC/DC carved out its own legend with a stripped-down, relentless sound. Yet Young's opinion of Deep Purple never wavered, rooted equally in personal experience and an irreconcilable divide in musical philosophy. Led Zeppelin. Even before AC/DC achieved global fame, Angus Young wasn't afraid to challenge bands already enshrined as rock royalty. Among his targets was Led Zeppelin, one of the most revered and influential acts in music history. While critics and fans alike hailed Led Zeppelin as genre-redefining innovators, Young offered a far less flattering assessment, particularly of their live performances. Speaking to Classic Rock magazine, Young recalled attending a Led Zeppelin concert and walking away thoroughly unimpressed. Despite the band's reputation for epic, improvisation-heavy shows, he found their performance bloated and dull. They played for 3 hours, but for 2.5 hours, they bored the audience, he remarked bluntly. To Young, it was baffling that a group with such colossal acclaim could fail to sustain the crowd's excitement throughout their set. For Young, Led Zeppelin's live approach lacked the fiery urgency he believed defined great rock and roll. While their concerts showcased technical brilliance, extended solos, intricate musical passages, and moments of sheer virtuosity, he saw these as self-indulgent distractions rather than enhancements. "It's sick. They should be the most exciting band in the world," he added, frustrated that a band of their caliber could succumb to what he viewed as excessive pretension. His critique wasn't entirely isolated. While Led Zeppelin commanded a devoted following, some concertgoers echoed Young's sentiment, feeling their sprawling jams and meandering set lists lacked the tight, explosive energy of their studio work. To Young, this was an unforgivable sin. Rock and roll, in his eyes, needed to be direct, hard-hitting, and relentless, qualities he found conspicuously absent in Led Zeppelin's live act. Young's perspective highlighted a fundamental divide in musical ideology. Where Led Zeppelin embraced expansive compositions and exploratory musicianship, AC/DC thrived on stripped-down, no-nonsense rock that never lost momentum. Both bands, of course, secured their places in rock history, but Young's standards remained unwavering. For him, a band's greatness wasn't measured by reputation alone. It was proven night after night on stage, by keeping audiences electrified with unrelenting energy. By that metric, Led Zeppelin simply didn't measure up. Bon Jovi. When discussing rock and roll's most uncompromising acts, few bands have demonstrated the steadfast devotion to their core sound that AC/DC has maintained throughout their career. They've consistently delivered raw, high-voltage rock without succumbing to passing trends or commercial pressures. This unyielding commitment to no-frills, high-energy music earned them both enduring respect and legendary status in music history. However, this same dedication meant they had little tolerance for bands they perceived as inauthentic or overly commercialized, particularly the glam and hair metal explosion of the 1980s. While there isn't a direct quote from Angus Young specifically calling out Bon Jovi, it's widely understood that AC/DC as a collective held minimal regard for the glam metal scene that dominated the decade. Acts like Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, Poison, and Def Leppard achieved massive popularity during this era, bringing a more polished, radio-friendly approach to hard rock. Their music typically featured massive hooks, slick production values, power ballads, and heavy emphasis on image, all elements that AC/DC considered antithetical to genuine rock and roll. For AC/DC, authentic rock needed to be gritty, straightforward, and built on pure musical prowess. They took pride in being a band that could enter a studio, plug in their instruments, and reproduce the same raw intensity they delivered in live performances. Their approach required no elaborate stage productions, synthesizers, or image-driven marketing campaigns. In stark contrast, bands like Bon Jovi wholeheartedly embraced the glittering, highly produced aesthetic that defined the glam metal period. One of the most significant distinctions between AC/DC and groups like Bon Jovi lay in their songwriting and production philosophies. While AC/DC remained firmly rooted in their blues-based, hard-hitting rock formula, Bon Jovi and similar acts frequently incorporated power ballads and polished anthems crafted for mainstream radio success. Though tracks like Livin' on a Prayer and You Give Love a Bad Name became enormous hits, to rock purists like AC/DC, they sounded too refined, too commercially calculated, and ultimately lacking the unfiltered power that defined true rock and roll. Another likely factor in AC/DC's dismissive attitude toward Bon Jovi was the glam metal scene's overwhelming focus on image. The big hair, flashy costumes, and music videos packed with rock star cliches stood in direct opposition to AC/DC's stripped-down, working-class approach to music. Unlike the spandex-clad bands dominating the 80s, AC/DC needed no hairspray or elaborate stage shows to validate their rock credentials. They believed in the fundamental power of roaring guitars, thunderous drums, and electrifying performances. Nothing more, nothing less. The Rolling Stones. During a 1977 interview with Classic Rock magazine, Angus Young openly criticized the Rolling Stones for what he viewed as an abandonment of their rock and roll foundations. He expressed frustration that the band, once a defining force in rock music, had begun incorporating more soul and R&B influences into their sound. While many praised the Stones for their musical evolution and genre experimentation, Young remained unimpressed, believing they were drifting from their core strength, delivering gritty, hard-edged rock music. The Rolling Stones get up and play soul music these days. This is supposed to be rock and roll, Young stated bluntly, making his disapproval of their artistic direction unmistakable. To him, rock music possessed a distinct energy and attitude that shouldn't be diluted with other styles. While he acknowledged the importance of soul music and respected its origins, he maintained it should remain the domain of artists who truly mastered it. "Leave that to the people who do it best, the black people," he remarked, emphasizing soul music's deep roots in African American culture and its proper cultural context. Young's critique wasn't intended to undermine the Rolling Stones' talent, but rather to argue they excelled most when embracing their rock and blues heritage. He believed if the band focused on the style that initially made them famous, they'd be a hell of a lot better and more comfortable in their performances. In his view, their ventures into other genres felt forced and unnecessary when they already possessed a natural gift for straightforward rock and roll. These comments reflected Young's broader musical philosophy. Throughout AC/DC's career, the band maintained an unwavering commitment to their signature sound, never straying far from their blues-based, hard-hitting rock formula. While some critics accused AC/DC of being repetitive, Young saw this as staying true to their identity and delivering what fans loved most about them. His critique of the Rolling Stones suggested he expected similar consistency from other legendary rock acts. At the time of Young's comments, the Rolling Stones were undergoing significant musical evolution. Their sound had expanded beyond the raw blues rock of their early years, incorporating elements of funk, disco, and soul, as evident on albums like Black and Blue, 1976, and Some Girls, 1978. While this artistic shift helped maintain their relevance in a changing musical landscape, it also divided longtime fans, some of whom, like Young, wished they'd remained faithful to their original sound. Despite these criticisms, the Rolling Stones and AC/DC eventually developed mutual respect over the years. Both bands became iconic representatives of rock music, each maintaining their distinct approach to the genre. However, Young's 1977 remarks serve as a testament to his unshakable dedication to authentic rock and roll. He never hesitated to challenge even the most established names in music if he felt they were losing sight of what made them great. To Young, rock's essence was simple, powerful, unfiltered, and direct, and he demanded nothing less from the bands that shaped the genre. What do you think about Angus Young's critiques of these bands? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.